I'm Mark Smith at the White House, where the news is that America's economy has grown. That's right, grown at a 3.5% rate in the third quarter. That's good economic news for the White House, and we're here to talk about that with Dr. Christina Romer, who heads the White House Council of Economic Advisors. Now, Dr. Romer, we've had a year's worth of shrinkage. Does this now mean the recession is technically over with?
Well, what I think it does mean is that we have turned a very important corner. So you're absolutely right. Real GDP has fallen for the last 4 quarters. And if you think back just 2 quarters ago, it was falling at a minus 6.4% annual rate. So this is an incredible turnaround. I do think it is a turnaround in the sense that I anticipate we're going to keep seeing these positive GDP numbers going forward. And boy, that's a very welcome day.
So although the technical definition of a recession is a couple of successive quarters of shrinkage and now we've got growth, I gather you're not exactly throwing any parties here.
Of course not, because even if we've turned the corner, we know it's a long way before you're actually completely recovered. And of course, what the president focuses on is putting people back to work, getting that unemployment rate down. And we do know that even the turnaround in employment and unemployment typically lags the turnaround in GDP, much less, it's not just enough to have the employment and unemployment numbers moving in the right direction. We want to get them really recovered. And so that's going to take time.
Okay. I gather that you believe that much of what you see in the third quarter figures comes from the economic stimulus plan that the president put into place and other things like cash for clunkers.
Yeah, so no, we did a report to Congress about a month ago where we estimated that somewhere between that the Recovery Act was adding somewhere between 3 and 4 percentage points to real GDP growth. And that's not just our number, that's a lot of private forecasters, other government agencies. And that was in the third quarter. So that gives you a sense that if we're seeing 3.5% real growth this quarter, without the Recovery Act, we could be seeing 0 or even a negative number.
Well, let me ask you, though, about the jobless numbers, because we had new claims for jobless benefits that were still over 500,000 this time around that just came out. Clearly, the unemployment picture is one that's got to be troubling for you.
Of course. I mean, you can't have an unemployment rate of 9.8% and not be deeply troubled. That is just the #1 problem that we have to solve. I would focus on the change in those initial claims in unemployment insurance, because that's where we first start to see some improvement. What we do see is those initial claims have been getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and that's an important step. But you're right, they're still elevated. Likewise, we're going to have an employment report a week from tomorrow. Almost surely we're going to keep losing jobs. That is sort of the normal dynamics of recovery. GDP turns first, then you start to see employment finally starting to grow a little bit after that.
Dr. Romer, finally, let me ask you about the politics of this. The polls still don't give the president an awful lot of credit for this, the turnaround that you're beginning to see. Does that concern you? Do you think he should get more credit?
Well, of course, I think the policies that we've put in place have been a tremendous part of the turnaround that we've seen. But, the American people are still suffering greatly. And, I think that's probably the main thing that we're seeing. We all know that the economy has been through just a horrendous year. And, I think people are going to wait and see the economy start to recover. And I anticipate they'll start to get a lot happier and perhaps give the president more credit for it.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Christina Romer, chair of the White House Council of Economic Advisors, on today's upbeat news about economic growth in the third quarter. I'm Mark Smith, the Associated Press at the White House.